Okay, people. Y'all don't know this. But this is going to be my last time trying this. I've tried it like 3 times already. I don't know why I can't square this sort of concept in my head. But I think I'm not good on a reshoot here. I'm good in one clean shot. I'm not used to repeating. Maybe that's it. This one's been a tricky one to record. Spqr. Senatus Populus K Romanus. I think it means the Senate and the people. It's the theme of Rome. This is a book by Mary Beard, which is the reason I got it. All the meme stuff happened, and everyone's all asking, how often do you think of Rome? That's why I think it became available on the Audible Plus, right? Because, I think it got popular, and they're like, hey, let's give it on the Unlimited for a bit. Maybe these people want to give it a listen, and I'm like, I'm one of those people. I had watched another documentary from Mary Beard before about Rome. That's what she is. She's a Roman historian, which sort of tells you how much we know about these people, that I can just cover them and have a full career, which she does. She does a great job. The rating is a 3 out of 5. It's not written in a way, story-wise, to captivate, right? It won't. If you're into another genre already, just stay in that lane. You'll be fine. If sort of the meme got you thinking, or you're a fan of Rome already, this is a great either starter or meal if you're already vested, which you wouldn't think could do both, but it can. Again, the entire book leans on Mary Beard's expertise of the subject, and she is an expert. Full-on historian. What is that bug? Full-on historian. The real deal. You can cite her in class. Specialist expert. She's the real deal. So she'll grab a subject and then just go off, right? I'm about government. She can hit any point in the spectrum of Rome's existence. She can hit points in our existence that tie to Rome, right? She goes all over. But I think that's sort of the problem I'm having in trying to describe it to you in the way that I do in these videos. Because then it becomes ingrained in you by the end of this book in a weird way. It feels like things you've always known by the end of it, even if it's new. I think a lot of this was new. It turns into just sort of a back knowledge you have. Like you grow up and you learn. By the time you're an adult, you just think certain things about your state. That's what it feels like by the end of this book, because of the way she does it. Again, not chronological-ish. She covers the beginning, sort of the Republic, the emperors, sort of in that sort of mode. But in amongst it, it's just countless facts, anecdotes, and examples. For instance, it made me think of Dave Chappelle. Do you remember that time there for a second where everyone was like beating up comedians, and then Dave Chappelle punched the one guy back, and all the comedians were flipping out about it, and other people were just sort of laughing because it's the internet and we laugh at everything. This happened in Rome. In Rome, there was a time when there were comedians, which tells you something about their society, that comedian can be a job you do. And one of them went up there and told jokes that no one liked, and they went up and beat him up, and then he died from his, wounds. You can't have like a crowd of people beat you, and you always live. That's not a thing. In any case, he dies, and then the next one has to follow him, and he's real nervous, like, this crowd is killing people. I don't want to tell these jokes and die. But it's my job to tell jokes. And he says a thing, and he says it a way that he gets through. But it just made me think, it's a perfect example. And it's not just in little things. There are concepts throughout Rome, all throughout, that make you think of the modern world. Term limits. For a while there, they would elect two consuls. Could be anybody. Could be a senator. Could be a plebe, a citizen of Rome. The plebes would vote on them. The Senate would like approve or something like this. In any case, they went. There's two of them, and they'd serve 1 year at a time. Confusion abounded. You'd try and get this passed. The Senate would wait you out. Then you'd elect new consuls. I'm like, this sounds a lot familiar. Yes, it does. That's to my we should have term limits crowd. I personally don't think we should. I don't think they look for solutions to the problem in things that aren't there. That's my personal opinion. This is now not in the book. I'm just talking about the Senate now. They want term limits on the senators, but I'm like, you act like the new senators would do the thing you want them to do. Or if the thing you wanted to do would be the thing you want. Because this happens again in Rome a lot too. They ask for a thing and it backfires. Then they ask for you to take the thing away. And then the senators and the consuls are like, what do you want me to do? You want me to do what you say now or do what you said before? It's funny. It's like we've been through this. The not having term limits has gotten to America 250 years in. I say it's good enough. Let's leave it. That's just my personal opinion. But this is what this book does. It starts to pull these things out of you as you go along. Right? That you'll make different connections than I do. And if you're like, I'm not making any connections, she makes them for you. She'll come up with these concepts that tie to this and tie to that in these really fun and interesting ways. And then by the end, you'll see why everyone talks about it so much, but you'll also be one of those people, because it'll be, like I said, ingrained in your head a little way. Romulus. Let me just start. I love all the names. I love every name in this book. Romulus, Africanus, Cicero, Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus? Like as in Cincinnati? They're like, yes! I'm like, that's too cool. Okay, she doesn't give you wars. So if you want here and you want the wars, you gotta get that somewhere else. I wish she would do a book on just the wars, but I guess it gets complicated. There are not wars in here. She doesn't get herself bogged down with that. She doesn't get herself bogged down with every argument the Romans had. This isn't even everything that... It's not all of Rome in one book. Maybe that's the problem we're having with it. Because I keep thinking of things outside the box. But she won't give you the wars. It's just sort of meat and potatoes here. Like I say, the wars are a different course of a meal. There are other books. And what she'll also do, depending on your interest level, is names. Gibbons, Josephus, Titus. You'll get names of other people who were historians that you can then go look up and get even more information. So there's the good in that, which is what I'm going to do. After this, I want a full book on each of those characters I said. The Cincinnatus, Africanus, Scipio. I want Carthage. I want the whole 9 yards. But I think she focused more on it's so big, Rome. It's such a big deal that you have a tendency to go out. And what she constantly does is the thing that happened, she turns it in, right? So I can start a history of England from the Roman Empire and move forward up until today. And I can do that with almost every country in Europe. But what she does is she'll go, this is how they were in England and how it affected Rome. So she constantly folds it back in on itself. We have so much information about Rome that even like we get a sense of their lore in the history, right? So this is a history of Cicero, and he would do court trial type situations in, yes, the Temple of Jupiter, where Cicero does his legalese. Now, Cicero becomes famous on his own. So it's like you can get that, but know that that building was the one that was established 400 years earlier by Romulus himself. And so I'm like, I'm reading a story about a historical person, but in that history, I have a sense of his history. I mean, we're this that's like Inception levels of history, and it's all just getting beamed into your brain, and you just want to keep eating. It's very cool. They have, what do they call this? Septiminium, the festival of Septiminium, which some people think was the original name of Rome because it's 7 hills and there are hills around. And she goes, the problem with this is there are like 8 hills. And then she starts naming off the names of the hills, which got me thinking again, because some of it seems frivolous when we're talking, and they'll talk in very grand ways about wars and use the big words, but it might have been just 1,000 guys versus the 1,500 guys, right? These small numbers. That's not barely a skirmish. But it's sort of like at some point the king puts on his shining crown, right? It's his crowning moment. At some point you see this with Rome. At some point, no matter where you are, you see the sign that this is an empire that means something, that has this massive historical effect. And once you notice the king, now everything that led to him being king becomes important. So we go back as far as possible and try and learn everything we can. Before, a minute ago, we didn't care. It didn't matter. But there are other places in Italy where 1,000 dudes fought 1,000 dudes. It doesn't matter, because that place didn't end up with the shining crown. Rome did. So now the Septiminium, the 7 hills matter, and the names of the hills. There's an island. There's an island in Rome that they don't know how it was made, but the people say that after Tarquinius, bad king, I think it's Tarquinius. God, this happened like twice. I'm not sure which one it is. I believe it's Tarquinius. A bad king. After 200 years of a king, which is like almost as long as America's been around. After 200 years of something working, it stops working. There's a bad king. He got the hots for a Lucretia. And she's not having it. And so she, I think, offs herself rather than whatever else. And then they get rid of him. They off him because he's a bad king. But then they don't know what to do with the wheat on his land. That's what they said. What do we do with this wheat? Because no one wants to eat it. Because it's tainted by his wickedness. They harvest the wheat, chuck it in the river Tiber. It then doesn't go far because it's low tide. They say it congregates in sort of a sandy area, and thus the island was made. Is this real? Is it true? Historians now believe it and don't believe it. Roman historians, 2,000 years ago, some believed it, some didn't. And I'm like, you start to see almost living parallels between us and these Roman senators who wrote these histories, or these Greeks who wrote these histories, all those hundreds of years ago. And it's trippy when it starts to happen, when these things, when you're eyeball to eyeball with a person who's, nowhere near your timeline, so to speak. The River Tiber. What a great name. Okay, after the king, the era of kings became the era of the Republic. This, they had a setup. And again, this starts to relate, if you get into politics any at all, you'll start to see the parallels. Now here I'm going to get to parts where I don't know if I've already said this or not, because I refilmed this multiple times in a row. They had the Senate, which were the founding families. It was hereditary. You were born into being a Senate. You could maybe earn your spot up into it if whoever's in charge lets you in, but that's harder to do. You had the Senate, you had the plebes. These are the people, not the trolley name on the internet. Actual, that were people, so that even if you were a normal criminal where you're from, you're a plebe, a plebeian of Rome. And that title means more than a nobody from, Sabina. And they then said, you plebes vote and pick us 2 consuls. These will be the people in charge of Rome for 1 year at a time, every year. Of course, you know how politics goes. It amplifies. It goes up and it goes up and it goes up. For 400 years it does this. And we have turns in the table and how it goes. We get some bad ones. We get readjustments. And all throughout, we're honing in on the rest of the society, right? They have the 12 tables, what they call them, like their constitution. Here are sort of conceptual rules we have about how everything should function. And then issues come up. He won't keep his stupid trees off my lawn. There's now regulation, not particularly in the 12 tables, but from them. Some part of them will say, shave your trees off his crap. His dogs are, his animals are coming and eating my crops. It's like, well, give him money for the crops, or he gets to keep your animals. These kind of legalese, back and forth, washing, back and forth. So as the society is getting its shape, which the shape itself is cool, they originate concepts in Rome that last even to today. I think the liberal arts degree was named after, sort of the Roman education. Liberal being free, the free arts. That's a concept from Rome. But that concept itself, where back in those days, if you were from Athens, Greece, you're from Athens, Greece. You're Athenian. What about those other Greeks? Those are just Greeks. We're the only Athenians. You have to be from the city. What Rome did is they started to make colonies. They started to take over spots and say, look, we're going to let you be, you can stay Milan or whatever the town name was. You just have to give us troops. It was essential that you give troops. But then in the place, they sort of leaned on them. So that the ones who saw themselves or acted in a way that's Roman were better off. You'd get better deals, sort of sweeten the pot. But I'm not forcing anyone, which of course is a subtle pressure that ends up forcing people. So what would happen is a new place in Spain would get set up, a colony. And they would say, the ones who live here are, Barcelona. You're from Madrid. You're a Catalonian. But you're also Roman because we own it now. You get the benefits of being Rome, protection, whatever, access to trade, follow our roads. You get bypassed from these taxes and such and whatnot. It elevates you where you are, and it connects you mentally to some other thing that exists. No one had done that before. No one had taken, that you could be a dual citizen, kind of, so to speak. It was always you're just from your town. And this, along with banking, I think, helped make the empire an empire that works, that can function. But part of the problem then, again, this constant steady growth. At some point, Gauls invade. Again, any subject I bring up, she brought up, and then she told you how it affected them. But this is a good example. the Gauls invade, and then they get rid of them. Which Gauls were just their term for anyone not Roman, just sort of barbarians in the world who aren't Greek, because I know who those cats are. The Gauls invade, and then they get a sense of, we need to expand now, which wasn't in their mantra in any way. You know, like America had Manifest Destiny, where we're like, we must get to the other coast. We must own from coast to coast. The Romans never had that. So, you know, they don't know why exactly. She thinks maybe it was the Gaul invasion to say, you know, we better expand out before we get expanded into. This expansion sort of leads to the Punic Wars, which I think there might have been 3, which I think the Punic Wars are just Greek wars, just wars with Greeks versus Greeks. This is where you end up with Carthage, their main nemesis. She has a section on Hannibal, both then and, you know, sort of now. And again, the parallels from Hannibal to World War II are kind of crazy. He invaded. He was winning all sorts of wars. He got within 18 miles of Rome and then just didn't go in. And then from then on till now, military historians all over have wondered, why didn't you go in? Why didn't you take Rome? And I think he saw what the Germans didn't see in World War II. And that is what feeds it, right? So the Germans made this big time war with no plan as to how to get across to America to stop us feeding the enemy of the Germans, which would have been the British and the French, etc. So I think this is what Hannibal saw. He saw that it isn't the city itself. Like, let's say he took Rome itself. I have the city. That doesn't kill all the tendrils, all the little colonies that they've been setting up. Those can feed any Roman general on the outside that he didn't take out already. And they'll just make another army and come back and come back and come back. And eventually, because he has no way as a singular army to take out all of those others, eventually he'll lose out. That's why he didn't go in. You see? I think that's why he didn't go in. And that the parallel is there with sort of modern times where it starts to be, it's not about the war. I mean, it's not about the battles. It's about the war. That's part of America's strength, is that no one can go across those oceans. You know, Germany's tied to its enemies. France on one side, Russia on the other, England a boat ride away. It never had a plan. Never had a plan for how it's actually going to finish this off. And I think there's a lot of parallels to that in these Punic Wars. They go to town against where Hannibal's from, Carthage. And I think by the end it takes a 2-year naval blockade / siege to finally starve them out. And then they just go in and wreck shop. Which America hadn't done yet, but we're also not, 700 years old yet. You wonder if some of this is effective for us in the future, for what's coming. Will we think like the Romans when we wipe some people off the map and say it was justified? They looked at the destruction of Carthage as sort of an omen to their future. Like at some point, we put this evil out and it's going to come back to us. So that's some of the other fun of this book too, and that she goes deep into, is their introspective nature. That we have so much access to so much of their writing, and that it was a big deal to them. I think there's some mausoleum somewhere where the family's accomplishments were in stone, right? Here's all of our conquerors. And right up with the conquerors, they put a poet, a family poet. They see literature and poetry the same as the war, right? I mean, it was a very well-established setup. You also start to see why, I think there's like three places. I think the French, the Germans, the Russians, Rome themselves, all see themselves as the the heart, the heart of that empire that spanned and conquered so much. That we're the, what is it? The torch came to us, and they sort of all can have sort of a justifiable claim on it because it was so big. But that one empire can have that much of an effect across that much of our world, kind of wild. I also was thinking, back in those days, Carthage was in what's now, I think, Tunisia. I think that's what the book said. But they were mostly Mediterranean type people. It's a different mentality. Once Rome beat Carthage and, just sort of went full on almost genocide, that took that Mediterranean off the African board, so to speak. Because then what followed was sort of an Arabic takeover. And I wonder if some of the survivors of these type of wars, intermarried in with the Arabic, but you would come with a different mentality. You're now like a different type of Mediterranean person because you're not on the Greek side where everything worked out. They didn't scourge the earth of everything Greek. They liked Greece. They emulated Greece in a lot of ways. They saved a lot of Greek things. They took them over. They won, but they also saved a lot of it. They didn't save any of Carthage. So now I wonder if these thoughts seeped into the Arab type people and what effect that has throughout the eons to now. Because Northern Africa is mostly Arab now, where I don't think it was before. And again, that's an effect that's happening now on actions that were started 2,000 years ago. We go from sort of the Republic. The Republic, like I said, it grew and grew until it's beyond the bounds of functional for the government that it has. It's too far spread from Rome to Spain to Egypt and Asia. Right? It's too much, and what you start to do is say, that guy over there, he's really good at it. Let him sort of run it. And we start leaning ourselves into a kingship type, right? When you let individuals run all of the thing, it's not far for him to say, you know what, just make me king. Why are we re-electing me when I can just stay here? That power's sitting there. And when you reward the power hungry with power, you just breed more power hungry people. And that's what they did. They never, like I said, they never picked the consuls off of hereditary. It was always just pick. So at some point, you're just going to get somebody better than everyone. And that's what we end up coming to. And it's Caesar, Julius Caesar, and Pompey. That's his nemesis. Ergo, it becomes sort of the nemesis of the story. Not of our story, but of his story. They start a civil war. And then this is a civil war like no other, where the ramifications are happening in all these little colonies. They all see themselves as Roman too. So if I'm in a colony and it's Egypt, what do I think of Rome? What do I think of Rome being run by Pompey or run by Caesar? Word gets to people quick enough that they have an opinion. That they say, I'll send Caesar this help. I'll send Pompey that help. I'll fight him here. I'll fight him there. People started. Pompey died somewhere in Egypt where he thought he'd have some backing. Didn't. People were, well, I'm the governor in Egypt. What if I kill Pompey? Caesar will like me. Caesar didn't like it. They said he teared up when he saw it, the dead body, but he still won. So when he won this time, he just said, you know what? I'm not playing. Make me emperor. I run the whole empire. I'm an emperor. And they did. Of course, then they killed him. Further craziness ensues. But Augustus, I think it was, I want to say, okay, so he had a kid from Cleopatra. But then he also had another kid he picked. I should have checked this before. I don't remember which one it was who ends up being Augustus. I think it was the one from Cleopatra. I don't rightly remember now. In any case, It wouldn't have mattered if it's a biological son or not from the way they have their setup. But what he managed to do, he managed to coalesce everything in a way Caesar wasn't able to, and be an emperor himself. And she goes into a long discussion as to how he sort of did this. He, of course, a lot of, let's say, buy-offs, right? I'm given tickets to the Colosseum, to the racetrack, which I think was bigger than the Colosseum. I think it could hold like 200,000 people or something. It was a large number. But it's a racetrack, so, you know, if you look at the Daytona Speedway, it can hold 100,000 easy, and it's not all the way around the seating. So they had races, chariot races, and the Colosseum. But, you know, everyone in town can't get in there. So he would straight pay out. He'd pay out money. He's like, you were a good soldier. Here's 3 months' pay just in one big lump sum. He'd help families. He'd help the poor. Obviously anything for political gain. So now the people like me. For the Senate, he took on the powers of a consul, which were the ones who were supposed to be in charge, and the powers of a tribune, which were the representatives of the plebes, who weren't senators, but neither of their titles. So he won't say that he's those things, but he has the power of those things. And I think between that and I don't want to be in a civil war anymore, I think that people just sort of accepted it. I'm like, it seems reasonable. Then he starts running the empire. He does some conquering. He brings in more wealth. And wealth in the levels of, you know, slaves all over the place. That's free labor. And no one has to pay taxes because we have so much money literally coming in to the coffers here. So if you're living in Rome, it could be pretty up there. Or at least the chance could be up there. I'm sure some got their money and went out to the country. There's all kind of options. But these are options that weren't available in other societies. In any case, he honed it in such a way that it became the model for the next 400 years, I believe, of emperors. Emperors running Rome. I think I'm going to stop at that. I think I tried to cover every little nugget, and that's what threw me off in the other videos. But I think I'm going to stop here. What I will say is it's highly interesting to me. And the way I want it now, my histories, I've had enough of the broad overviews. Nothing to denigrate this book whatsoever. Like I said, this is a great book. It's just a personal preference right now for me. Is I want full on about an individual. I want like 15 different individual books. So that's what I'm going to hunt here in a minute when I'm turning off this video. There's other books on this. And the Punic Wars, because it's a cool name. But again, not to be sidetracked. At some point, you're going to have a book about Cincinnatus. Just know it. I'm warning you now. You're going to have a book about Africanus. Definitely those two amongst others. Caesar. Obviously, I'm going to cover Caesar at some point. So, you know, just look forward to those. I don't normally preview them. It's not going to be next week. It's not going to be for a while. It's coming down the pipeline. It's coming down the pipeline. Okay. But this book is very good. Like I said, it will live in your brain in a very satisfactory way. Mary Beard's 1,000% an expert. You can trust everything that she says. So, you know, go give this a go if you're interested. I'm now going to do my ad break. Okay, people. If you watched this far, thank you. This one really was a bit of a hot mess. I really did try it like 3 times back to back. Did not help. I know now for the future, do not try and refilm this mess. You just gotta bite the bullet and go. I can't be an actor. I can't do reshoots, bro. I said it once right, and every other time almost wrong. Woo! That was terrible. In any case, these are my books. You can get them through Amazon. You know, I think if you have an iPad or something like this, you can't buy it off the iPad. You have to go through the Amazon site. This is how they're being. It's not that big a deal to me. I suppose if that's too much trouble, then, you know, That's fine. I'm not gonna break your arm. What is it? I'm not gonna twist your arm to go buy these books. If you want to read a book, you'll go buy it. If not, well, then you're just gonna enjoy the video, right? That's what this is for. But like I say, you can get the unlimited and read them all there. However you want to do it. It all works. Thank you. Thank you all. Hope this wasn't too much of a mess. I still got to get a mic. But maybe I will this week. Maybe I'll get a mic this week. I will see you lovely lot next week.